think Greta was right. My subconscious did have a sense of structure, that she edits a lot of her writing by reading out loud. And all the napping does not hurt, though. Hi friends! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet and literal corner of my apartment. Today we're going to be trying the writing routine of the one, the only, Greta Gerwig. I've made quite a few videos now of my own writing routines, days in my life, and the conclusion they probably bring you to is that I do not have a real routine. My ADHD brain is not wired for repetitive structures, and despite common belief, writers are unfortunately not born knowing how they write best. I need to be able to experiment and find what works for me, and then a couple weeks later, take that learning and do something entirely different. I need novelty, challenge. So what better way to change things up than to try the writing routines of famous authors and writers, as so many YouTubers have done at this point now before me. And who better to try and mimic than one of the most talked about writers in Hollywood right now? For those who don't know, Greta Gerwig is an American actress, director, and screenwriter. At the start of her career, she mainly focused on acting in independent films, earning a Golden Globe nomination among other recognitions. But she really became a household name, in my opinion, when she began writing and directing. Her three biggest writing ventures have all received Academy Award nominations in some way or another. These included popular coming-of-age story Lady Bird, the 2019 adaptation of Little Women, and most recently, and most talked about, the Barbie movie. Obviously, my life is gonna look quite different from Greta's. She lives in Manhattan, I live in Texas. She has 2 kids. I have a chihuahua, and she is a lot of work for me. There will not be a Timothée Chalamet cameo in this video. I am so sorry to disappoint. But I did do quite a bit of research to figure out what her writing routine and philosophy looks like, and here's what I found. In an interview with Vogue, Greta described her ideal writing process as taking place somewhere cozy and private, preferably close to a bed because she takes lots of naps while she writes. A woman after my own heart. Secondly, Greta is a pantser, meaning she does not plot things out beforehand. Instead, she lets the story guide her through the first draft, believing that you should essentially trust your instincts when it comes to structure. She's quoted saying, "I think structure is so deep in us. We put it in stories, we tell our friends, or in emails we write. We want it. It's how we create meaning. And story structure is our birthright, inherent to our existence with language, and denying it is denying a fundamental part of ourselves." So she writes excessively at first to figure out what the core of a story should be, and then edits later. Greta has ADHD, and she lets herself fall into what we call hyperfocus. It's a phenomenon experienced by many, but is particularly common in those with neurodivergence. And essentially, everything melts away, and all there is the thing that you're working on. You lose complete track of time. I'm saying this firsthand because I also have ADHD, so I'm hoping this part will be pretty easy for me. One of my favorite things about Greta's writing is the dialogue. And she's explained before that when writing, she often reads the words aloud, and she even enlists the help of others to really think about the way things sound. She describes there as being a musicality to it all. She also writes in collaboration with her husband, so the two will write privately and then meet up, swap pages, and gauge each other's reactions. Lastly, and I love this one, Time magazine reported that Greta is a big walker. She goes for frequent walks, often as a remedy for writer's block. It's when you're walking, she insists, that life happens to you. I'm gonna try and follow this the best that I can, being fully aware that there will be some differences. The first of which being, I am not working on a screenplay. I am writing a novel. For those who are new here, hi, I'm Julia. I'm on the 3rd or 4th, depending on what you count, draft of a young adult contemporary novel. And for the purposes of these videos, I'm calling it Project Iris. It has coming of age and romance plot lines, but when I was first writing it, I was trying to cram every single story I wanted to tell in one 70,000-ish word novel, and it was, as you can probably expect, very messy. So I'm excited to try the routine of somebody who writes in excess without a clear destination in mind, but has also somehow managed to refine those into clear, meaningful stories. Let's go. Okay, good morning, friends. I couldn't find any interviews specifying what time Greta wakes up, when she gets going, so I decided to just, take that win, and it is 9 o'clock. 73 question interview with Vogue, she specified that her favorite foods as a kid were mac and cheese and cereal, and that those are still her favorite foods today. And this is perfect for me, who is not very good at cooking and has those exact two comfort foods. But strangely enough, I don't actually have any with me. You know what? Strike that. I have Paw Patrol microwavable mac and cheese, but I think I should do something a little bit better for lunch than that, and I don't have cereal. So I'm thinking, since Greta specifies that she loves walks, those give her inspiration anyways, I'm gonna walk over to the Trader Joe's, grab some cereal, and grab some mac and cheese. It is a beautiful day outside, so I could not be more excited to do this with y'all. Okay, Greta is definitely onto something. Cereal, beautiful walk, great way to start the day. But I have yet to do any actual writing, so now is our time to jump into that and get to work. Like I mentioned earlier, Greta is a pantser, so she writes a long first draft to decide what the core and the heart of a story is. And I have actually already done the long first draft, and the long second draft, and maybe the long third draft. The part of Greta's process that I don't think I had complete follow through with was the finding the core of the story from that draft. By the time I finished it and I started rereading it, instead of pulling out the parts I liked, really thinking about the heart of that story, I just really hated it. I instantly dissected it, thinking through everything I needed to fix, instead of thinking through what I'd actually found as a result of that exploration. And I have printed out the entire giant draft and honestly only read through it like once. So what I'm gonna challenge myself to do right now is to revisit that old first draft, read it without being too critical of things, without thinking through how I need to improve every single scene, and instead looking at it as a whole, saying, what is the core of the story? What am I trying to say? I'm not gonna reread the entire thing. That would take me all day, but I do wanna read the most important scenes and just allow myself to enjoy it and figure out what did work. So let's go to my reading nook and do it. found it, and I am so excited. When I first started the revision process, I was really frustrated because the story had basically splintered off into a million different directions. It wasn't what I wanted it to be, but it's pretty clear from the way I wrote, I didn't really know what I wanted it to be. And now, looking at Greta's process, I realized that's okay, because some of this is salvageable. Not necessarily the words itself, but I did find the core of what I was trying to write. And that core actually wasn't in the plot itself. You see, when I started writing this, I was trying to process the idea of gifted kid burnout. You know, the core concept of my story basically is somebody who comes home early from college after dropping out. And I can tell reading this that what I actually wanted to write about was that feeling of returning back to a place that is supposed to be home but doesn't feel like it anymore. About losing your identity in the place that's most familiar to you. That is the core of the story, and I found it in this paragraph. I'm not trying to claim that the writing is phenomenal. These words probably won't make it into the final draft, might not make it into the next draft, but they did get me thinking. Adulthood wasn't supposed to be like this. I was supposed to turn 18, go to my dream school, and then my dream grad school, working until I passed the bar. A couple months of college and it all fell apart. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is growing up. Maybe I never really was who I thought. Now I just have to think through the plot and communicate that in a way that's not so on the nose. But I think Greta was right. My subconscious did have a sense of structure and knew the story I was trying to tell. I was just creating too many different obstacles for myself. This is the heart of the story. Now I just have to format a plot with enough intrigue and tension to get that across. Reading this for the first time in a while, I really have faith in my eventual ability to do that. So I think we're ready to start actually writing. It has taken me so long to get to this point. In that same 73 question interview with Vogue, Greta shared that her ideal writing process would take place somewhere cozy, somewhere secret, and close to a bed so she can take naps. So I'm gonna set up a little writing space within my bedroom. I think it fits all those requirements, and I'm gonna make it as cozy as possible to kick off my chaotic writing process. Since Greta shared that she edits a lot of her writing by reading out loud, I thought I'd do something similar, but a little bit more suited for writing a novel. As you probably noticed, I was writing all of that by hand, and I'm thinking what I'll do now is read it out loud with the voice to text on Google Docs on. I figure I'm gonna need to type it up anyways, but this way I can hear what it sounds like out loud, I can make some changes as I go, really think about the musicality of the words, as Greta says. By my third day of work, I am crawling. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty obsessed with this routine. So let's talk about how it's going so far. I've done a good amount of writing, but really what I like about this routine is that it doesn't feel like there's too much pressure. It actually is super cozy. I mean, I don't know if this is what Greta's everyday looks like. I really doubt it. But following the advice that she's given, I feel like this routine focuses on the idea that to tell human stories, you have to experience life as a person. You have to let yourself rest, let yourself find joy, let yourself be part of the world around you. And I do feel like that's coming out in my writing. And reading things out loud was super helpful. It made me realize that, if I can't even pronounce a fancy word, maybe I shouldn't be using it because that's not what I talk like, that's not what I sound like. I think it's really helping me find my own voice that feels very true to me. And all the napping does not hurt, so. Next, I'm gonna keep writing, gonna do another sprint and try and fall into that hyper focus. But first, I wanna run with a piece of advice that Greta's given relating to writing, which is to be honest with yourself and think through the things that you hate. I'm paraphrasing that, I'll put the actual quote on the screen. But find the things that you hate and then think about how you can subvert them. What tropes get on your nerves, or how can you use them in a way that's interesting and different? So I'm gonna make a little list of the things that really irk me in writing and then think about what that could mean in the context of my story. If I can get out of bed, I will get out of bed. Let's go. A really useful exercise. I found that what really seems to irk me is when relationships and just nuanced topics are portrayed in a way that doesn't seem to understand the complexities that lay beneath it. So I think some good next steps for me, knowing that, are to understand the complexities, to think about what different things are weighing on each of my characters. There were also some specific tropes that I want to subvert. I always think about that when we're talking about things like disability representation. There's a lot of negative tropes there that I think can be done in a more authentic way. So we're gonna keep that in mind. We're gonna think about the complexities and we're gonna keep going into the next scene. is setting, and since I don't have any insight into Greta's night routine, I think I'm gonna call it. Thank you so much for joining me and sticking around while I try new things. Last week I did an hour-long write with me. I've done morning routines, evening routines, reading vlogs. I just love how this channel is an opportunity to really dive into something new. And I was so pleasantly surprised by this routine in particular. My brain works a little bit differently than others, so sometimes I get really frustrated when I'm trying to do things the way I feel like I should. So getting to try all these routines really shows me that there's no right way to do things. That's the joy of writing, of being a creative. We all have different stories to tell, different lives, we do things differently. And the best way to make a story I love is to work with my brain, not against it. So I appreciated all the naps, all the focus on getting outside, on reflecting, exploring, and I'm excited to try more of these in the future. So let me know in the comments if there's any other writing routines you'd like me to try, what you want to see next. Thank you so much, and I'll see you real soon.